We welcome you here tonight. And in case you think the Preservation Society doesn't do anything, we've had Sam Waterston, we've had Christine Baranski, we've had thousands of people on the Elms for the finale episode of season 4, and now coaching. And we're so bored. Because we won't have another opportunity to thank people. My job tonight is to do so. And the one point that I really want to make is that coaching is not an event. It is a spectacle. And it is a really special spectacle. And I hope after hearing our 5 speakers tonight, you will appreciate the kind of work and the history of this spectacle. And the fact that we in Newport are so lucky to have the whips come to Newport and spend 3.5 days with us. So with that, thanking all the whips. I don't know how many of you are here, but I suspect that Brian is going to point you out later. Thank you to the Coaching Club of America, celebrating the 150th anniversary of the club. Thank you to Tucker Johnson, who is the president of the Coaching Club. Thank you to Walter Ayers, the chair of coaching. Thank you to the Friends of Coaching, many of people who have contributed to helping us pay for hay and water and other ways to accommodate the horses. Thank you to Beverly Little, who is in the audience, who's the chair of the Coaching Weekend Dinner Dance and has done more work. And Beverly, you've got to stand up because you deserve an applause. Has done so much work. And by the way, all of these people are volunteers. They're not paid, they are volunteers, and thank you, Beverly. Thank you to Kenneth Lind and David Little for co-chairing the weekend. Thank you to the Properties Department and the Special Events Department and the Gardens and Grounds Department and the Museum Affairs Department. We might get a call from somebody in the coaching club saying that there is a pothole on some street, and our staff goes out and fills that pothole. Right, Walter? So we could not do this spectacle every 3 years without all of you, of course, but this incredible group of people who have brought their horses here. I think there are 76 horses in town right now, Walter, is that correct? 70, 80 maybe? 11 coaches. If you don't know yet the routes, make sure you go to our website because all 3 days of travel are on the website so you can know where to stand. Really special event, and I hope you all appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian Owens, who's the organizer of tonight's event. Brian is a very active member of the Coaching Club of America. He is a Newporter. He knows a lot about horses, and he knows a lot about coaching in general. I hope you hold up that book when you get your introduction finished, because he's just helped get an incredible book about coaching off the ground. And I thank you, Brian, very much, because Brian worked with our Museum Affairs staff to set up tonight's lecture. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Trudy. And thanks to all of you. I mean, this is an amazing turnout. I was just telling the panel, it's incredible. We have over 200 people in the audience, 150 on Zoom, I think. So coaching has never been more alive. And as Trudy said, this is the 150th anniversary of the Coaching Club. And this is hot off the press, folks. The new history of the Coaching Club is out. So we are going to share a lot of the images from the book with you tonight. So I'm going to get right into it because we don't have much time. We have a lot of activities starting this evening with parties and dinners and routes and meetings. So we're going to get right into it. So let's start with, on the far right, we have Walter Ayers, born and raised in New England in an equestrian family. He's been an avid polo player and carriage driver for over, is this right, 45 years, Walter? Okay. Initially with his father, Ted, and now with his wife, Amanda, and their 2 children, the Ayers, and their Blackburn farm team have participated in polo and driving events throughout the East Coast and Europe. And this year, this is your 10th weekend of coaching? Jesus.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, with your team of Argentine polo ponies.
I will say the first time I came, I was just a guest at the ball and said, what's all this carriage stuff? And here, fast forward, pretty involved.
He's a 3rd-generation owner of a historic preservation firm, Blackburn Building Conservation, and with a resume including decorative arts projects at the Breakers and at Marble House here in Newport, as well as the Massachusetts State House and the Old South Meeting House in Boston. He's a member of the Coaching Club and has helped, we'll talk about this later, develop the roots and coordination with the Coaching Club and the Preservation Society. So please welcome Walter Ayers. Next up, we have Melissa Warner, and Melissa has been involved with horses from a very young age. She grew up in Canada and northern Vermont. She's worked and competed with Morgans, National Show horses, Hackney ponies, and saddlebreds extensively in the New England area. She taught French for 7 years, but she decided to put all of her time into passion for carriage driving. She accepted a position in 1997 at the Austin Carriage Museum working for Gloria Austin. Some of you remember, Gloria used to drive with us before she died. She worked there as the equine manager and then a coachman until the spring of 2008. And during her time there, she was part of the Canadian team that competed in 1998 at the first single combined driving world championships. In 2008, she began working as the driving manager and coachman for Tucker Johnson. And her first event with the Johnsons was the Royal Windsor Horse Show, where they won the prestigious coaching marathon, being the first American coach to ever win. She was fortunate enough to be part of the U.S. four-in-hand driving team at the 2008 World Championships and at the 2010 World Equestrian Games in Kentucky. She continues to be active in pleasure driving and coaching for the Johnsons. She manages their entire family program of over 60 horses, including show jumpers, show hunters, fox hunting in both New Jersey and Florida. She also keeps the coaching club running very smoothly as our executive secretary. So please welcome Melissa Warner. Next up, we have Misdee Miller. She became interested in driving partly because of a piece of family history. 2 carriages she acquired that previously had belonged to her great-grandfather, William Wrigley, Jr. She's a world-renowned equestrian, media executive, and philanthropist, and is the owner and CEO of Wrigley Media Group. She leads a dynamic Kentucky-based company that creates and distributes globally recognized media content. She's a 4th-generation horsewoman, and she's carried on her family's storied legacy in the equine world, making history as the first woman to win gold in combined driving at the 2018 World Equestrian Games, and guiding her saddlebred division to an unprecedented sweep of World Grand Champion titles. I could be here all night listening to all your accolades, but she's also president of the World Coaching Club, and she and her husband, James, who you'll meet in a second, have been driving here at Newport since 2009, so please welcome Misdee Wrigley Miller. And Misdee's husband, James, next to me. They're based in Sarasota, Florida, as a prominent equestrian and business leader with a deep passion for historical carriage and competitive driving. With 25 years of polo experience, James was inspired 15 years ago by his wife, Misdee, and Tucker Johnson to master four-in-hand coaching. This led to him to excel in the modern sport of combined driving, where he represented the United States twice at the Pairs World Championships. He has presented coaches at the prestigious venues such as the Kentucky Horse Park, Devon Horse Show, Walnut Hill, with international highlights including presenting a coach to Queen Elizabeth at the Windsor Horse Show and driving with the British Coaching Club at Royal Ascot. This will make his 6th appearance in Newport. He's the current president of the coaching club, vice president of the coaching club, and he's also the owner of the Sarasota Polo Club. Additionally, he runs a small thoroughbred breeding operation in Paris, Kentucky. And so please welcome James Miller. Am I missing any other whips in the audience? Do I see anybody else? They were out driving earlier. Any other coaching? I see Justin Wiley. Is there a coaching club member? Justin, thank you for being. David Little, are you here, David? David is here, perfect. So thank you, guys. So what we're gonna do is, before we start talking about this year, I thought it'd be fun to run back in history and show some pictures from past coachings. And I don't know, Trudy, if you said, but it started back in 1968. The official Newport coaching weekend with the Preservation Society. So I thought we'd go right back to the first year. And I love this photo. All these photos now, as I said, are gonna be in our book. But this is Jack Seabrook, later on president of the coaching club, driving Venture. So this is Alfred Vanderbilt's coach out in front of Seafair there. Just fantastic. And to show you how much this event was covered in 1968, anybody want to guess where this photograph was published? Any guesses? Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated ran this, so yeah. And here we are right on Bellevue Avenue, right outside the International Tennis Hall of Fame. and that is Cecil Ferguson, who is a native Rhode Islander leading the team there. Walter, you knew some of the other whips there, correct?
Yes, this was the first year, as you mentioned. I think they were different. It was a CAA meeting, which is Carriage Association of America. And so they were, at this time, there were different turnouts. And there's a pair there, Caldwell. But there's also some family history. The Fairclough family was involved in that. We have John Fairclough's son, Jim Fairclough, who will be joining us this year. So like many pursuits, and horses are definitely this way, it's a family passion that gets often passed down. Although I guess just as many people who come in that way also say, look at their parents working and say, maybe I'll do something else. It's an incredible tradition, and I think these photos you're going to see, you just capture what we still do today. So that's the great thing about it, continuance.
And as I said, it started in 1968, but coaching in Newport has been going on since the early 1880s. And this is Theodore Havemeyer, one of the early members of the coaching club who joined the year after it was founded. And here he is at the Newport Country Club. And I was saying, I don't think he needed permission to bring his coach to the country club because he founded the club in 1893, and he was his first president until 1897. He actually founded the United States Golf Association, and later this week on Sunday, the U.S. Amateur will crown its champion, and the winner will receive the Havemeyer Trophy. So there you go.
You don't want to mention the other fact about Mr. Havemeyer?
What's that?
His demise?
How did he die, Walter?
Well, he was an avid coachman, and like many of us, he drove all year round. And on some of the coaching runs that would last for days and days, they would take many teams of horses, and he contracted a very bad case of pneumonia, I believe, or some awful disease from being basically exposed driving his horses, and that's actually what took him. But like many people, including my father, he didn't die on a horse, but he was playing polo into his last year of life, and I think that horsemen never die. They just keep going on a horse. And I don't want to do that anytime soon, and my wife would remind me, please stay on your horse during polo and driving, but it is part of the tradition that we just do it for lack of anything else. We love it, so you'll see it.
I'd ask Melissa, how do we rate his turnout here, Mr. Havemeyer?
Well, I would say that we aspire even today to match this level of excellence. It's perfect.
Wow.
Can you describe why it's perfect, Melissa?
Well, the horses, just from the picture, you can see they're standing, they're well behaved. The attendants, the grooms at the head of the leaders, the horses in the front, and the coachman who's on the ground next to the right wheeler, which are the two horses closest to the wheel of the coach, are in position for safety. The guests are focused on what's happening in front of them. The whip is looking forward. It's the horses are turned out beautifully. It's obviously for color. I can't tell if the brass is polished or not, but I can assume that it is. Yeah, it's a lovely example of what we try today to emulate.
I think it speaks to a really interesting part of this house, of Newport, of any late Victorian hobby, is the pursuit of excellence and the pursuit of turnout. And turnout is a word we use in horses all the time. And what it really means is perfection. And I think the Victorians did it to an extent that we in today's society can only ascribe to as far as how they dressed. I think the Gilded Age is a great example of how seriously this was taken. Every detail was thought through, and coaching is an epitome of exactly that. The way the horses look, the way the brass is polished, the way the teams are put together. It is all very engineered in a very careful manner, and I think that's what you'll see, and Trudy mentioned this, the pageantry of this is magical, and I think that's why we all, as whips, are thrilled to be here and to see all of the smiling faces who enjoy this and have enjoyed it for many years. Rhode Island is, I'm a Rhode Islander. I also have a lot of ties to Massachusetts, and I'm moving to Massachusetts to my dad's farm. But Rhode Island is a very traditional state. Our Navy history, lots of reasons, but coaching has been a tradition here for longer than really anywhere else. I mean, you think about New York had a heyday, and it was incredible, but it's gone, and it won't come back. Newport has been doing this since the foundation of this club in 1875, and it's an incredible legacy, and I think that we're all of us whips, and all of you here, I'm sure also, are just thrilled to inhabit this space and to make this a reality. I think it's a lot of work, as Beverly Little and myself can attest to. We have been literally on the phone for months trying to get everything to work out. The Preservation Society, all those here that are taking part in their fitness of their team. It's an incredible amount of work to get this off the ground. But at this point, we can all say we're happy to be here, and we're happy that you all are here enjoying it.
Well said. We'll flash forward to 2009. I love this photo. This is down at Hammersmith Farm, Lou Piancone driving Venture. With getting a little aid there. Looks like he's stuck. And that happens down at that part of Hammersmith Farm. It can be quite wet. So I thought I'd ask Misdee or James, have you ever been stuck? Yes. And
It happens.
It happens.
We won't say what happens, but it happens.
And is this the only way to get out? Is there a better way, or just have your grooms start pushing?
If it takes a tractor, you're in bad shape. No, it's not uncommon for groomsmen to help get the coach moving. In this particular case, I was there that day. As the coach sits on the turf, you can imagine it sinks in. Because the steel rims on those wheels are not very wide. They're certainly not rubber. So it will sink in, and you just get a little help to get out, but it can be bad.
Just as a side note, a coach weighs unloaded about 3,000 pounds. So you can imagine the amount of horsepower that's involved to move it, but also when it sinks in like that, think of the drag that's required to really push that. So whenever we have wet conditions, which this year we're not going to have, but we have a group of people who will help usually push every coach off, because we all sink when we get to the ground like that. So
Our next set of photos, I love this photo so much, I made it the inside cover of our book. This is William Staples, who's from Virginia. This is at the golf club, but it's just perfect. It's a perfect turnout. He's wearing the full evening dress of the club. We'll discuss it later. And on the right, that's Lou Piancone at the Breakers. And actually, I think that's 2009, because that's when the gates were off and they were being restored. But there's something about coaching photos that I could say it's 1809, and I think you'd agree with me. You'd say, oh, okay, sure. It's just perfect. The mist, Sarah Seaman took that, who will be with us this weekend. She's a fantastic photographer. But yeah, I had to put both these in the book. I just love them so much. And by the way, the PS was fantastic. I felt like Woodward and Bernstein. I went through about 2,000 photos, hand photos, not on computers, hand photos in the office. It was so much fun going through, and we narrowed it down to about 150. But this is a good one. This is John and Penny Hunt arriving at the golf club on Friday night, and that is their late horn player, Matt Stout, who was absolutely fantastic. Nick Mealy took this, and just the colors, it's perfect. And here's our own Melissa Warner. It's the coachman for Tucker Johnson. That's Tucker on the right, arriving at Chateau-sur-Mer. Maybe, Melissa, you could tell us about the coachman uniform.
Well, in this photo, I'm dressed as the guard. It's a private road coach, so we can turn it out two different ways. We chose to do it more the commercial road coach attire, where the guard would be the person that would have been on the coach in the early days that would have the bill of lading or pay the tolls or keep track of the route for the drivers from the stage stop to stage stop, and they kept the timetable going. And in early times, they often would ward off robbers. Mm-hmm. So it was a busy role, so we emulate that. The jacket matched the coach with the blue color. You'll see it tomorrow evening, but I won't be wearing it.
And this is also from 2009. This is at the ledges overlooking Bailey's Beach. We usually stop there, and as we say, we light the lanterns. James, you want to explain what that is to everybody?
Well, back in the day, there were no headlamps like we have on cars now. So yeah, the candle was the source of light on these coaches, and the with the reflective metal qualities inside of these lanterns, it would project decent on light. But I would prefer to have a set of real headlights. but we use them. They're mostly for show now when we use them. But Ms., do you have anything to expand on that? Because I know you love your headlamps.
No, I just think that there's nothing more romantic, and those of you who will be along the route tomorrow evening, we will have our lamps lit, and to see the coaches coming down, the road with their beautiful reflective lamps, it's very romantic, and it just takes you back to, as we experience here over the weekend, just the time of the Gilded Age and a time of elegance, and it's so nice to be able to preserve that and honor that.
I'll just add that the lamps historically were to be seen, not to see, to be seen by other coaches and carriages coming. They didn't shine any light on the horses or the reins, but they were to be seen by others.
Okay, folks, trivia question. 1968, this is Cynthia Hayden, one of the great whips of all time driving. This is John Nicholas Brown on the box seat, okay? Who is the little girl in the back? Anybody have any idea? 1968. You're close.
Someone had it over here.
Caroline Kennedy, that's right. That's little Caroline Kennedy on the box with her grandmother. That's Janet Auchincloss. Yep. Okay. So we're going to talk about, we're going to get ready for this weekend. So we're going to talk about equine conditioning. You've got your coach, you've got your horses, you've been invited to the weekend, you're all set, but you can't just show up running a marathon to the gate, without any training. So we got to get these horses in shape. So Walter, you want to talk about your polo ponies, what you've been doing to get ready for the weekend?
So, driving is totally different than polo, except for the fact that the horses are working in the heat. It's a much more endurance thing. So I start my exercising of polo quite early, usually in March, as early as I can. Some of the horses are in Florida, so they start a little bit earlier with friends of mine. But when you start training for driving, it's much more time-oriented. You have to really get on the road and replicate the conditions that we're working with here in Newport. Generally speaking, our drives are typically about 8 miles. People ask me, why is that kind of a rounded number? It really replicates the stage driving. I think you've seen pictures of all these coaches. It's a long history of stage driving and coaching. But what they would used to do, and this is from the male coach tradition, was they would meet different teams. And usually it was about a 10-mile stage that they would do. So most of our drives are sort of made up about that amount of time because it was viewed to be a reasonable amount of time for a horse to be trotting and working. That being said, with our conditions and weather here in Newport, for many years we benefited from the cool breezes. I always hate to say this because I sound like my grandfather, but the breezes aren't as cool anymore. And we've had to sort of acclimate my training, and I think everyone here has to do that. Some of us who live in the South obviously can replicate this earlier in the year when it gets hazy, hot, and humid, the 3 H's. But for us, I really just try to work them in this condition. I try to do it early, but it's just miles and miles of training. The more a horse is in harness, the more comfortable they are with it, the more fitness they have for it. So it starts early, and it continues up until almost the day before we come.
And Melissa Tucker has some new horses, correct?
Yes, Tucker purchased some Spanish horses, some Andalusians, and they came from southern Spain, so they're used to the heat. So we have a bit of an advantage this year. They were ready to come to Newport long before we were, that's for sure. But they're young Andalusians. They came from different owners. We put them together in January, so you'll see quite a young team. But they're very lovely horses, and they stand. They stand very still. Very important.
So Misdee, you're still active in combined driving. So I have a question for you. So when you're assembling a team of horses, does their ability to work well together depend more on their personalities, or is it something you can teach them?
It can be trained, but I look for horses that, number one, that are the same size, have about the same stride length, and especially the wheelers, who are the horses closest to the carriage that do most of the work, and they have to be able to work in concert together. The leaders are kind of the showiest of the team. You know, they're out front, and you know, they can be slightly smaller than the wheelers. They don't often get into draft to help pull the carriage unless we're going up a steep hill. So you look for the horses that are suited to each other, and then you really hope that they like each other, because they have to learn to work together, and most often they do. But we have had horses in the past that seriously do not like each other and will not work together, and they'll bite each other, and you're like, well, kick each other, which is, yeah, you really don't want to have happen. And you say, man, I love these horses, but we've got to change them out. They're not going to work together. So yeah, it's you have to have horses that like each other.
And what is your team this weekend?
This is actually a team that is my competition team. They are my 3-day eventing horses, so they are fit and conditioned. And I think it really says a lot about the temperament of these horses, because 3-day eventing, what we call combined driving, 3 very long days, and it's based on the sport of eventing. If you're familiar with that, first day is driven dressage. The second day is a cross-country marathon, which can be up to 23 kilometers long, and so my boys are also in shape. And then the final day is obstacle driving through cones. And generally, you know, it takes a completely different temperament of horses to be good coaching horses. They have to be quieter, they have to stand, very important, and, you know, be used to having people, you know, around them. And I'm fortunate to say the team that James and I are driving this weekend are probably the best team we've ever had. And to my knowledge, I mean, not a lot of people use their competition horses for coaching horses. Tucker's done it, Jimmy Faircloud's done it, but I think those are about the only 2 people I know that had horses that will do that.
All right, James, so we have our horses. We've been invited to Newport. How are we getting there? How are all these horses getting here? How are you getting your coaches here? Are you guys compete in Europe? Are you flying them over? Are you taking boat? What's the transportation situation?
I mean, obviously it depends a little bit where you're based. This time of year, we're based in Kentucky at our farm there, so we've got a bit of a drive, but we have equipment that essentially it looks like a motor coach for horses. It does have living quarters in the front half, and then it's got horse quarters in the back. And we've been using that equipment for a while now, since we've competed in Europe as well as here, because especially in Europe, the competition grounds are not always near cities or large cities or hotels, and you have to bring an army of people with you when you're carrying this amount of horses. Because for example, we have 5 horses here, and you're only showing 4 because you kind of have like a spare tire. You have a spare horse, but all those horses have to be groomed. All the equipment it's heavy. If you are using brass, it has to be cleaned consistently and constantly. And so it usually takes, idealistically, you want to have at least 1 person per horse. And so you have to have the equipment to get them here, and then, you know, you have to find Airbnbs and everything else under the sun you can imagine to house everybody. But when you do it, when you finally arrive and you get on top of your box seat, and everybody, your whole team's helped you put everything in an immaculate condition, and you get to drive down the street and have people see what you're doing and get a glimpse of what used to be, it all comes worthwhile. And a lot of people don't realize driving is actually quite sporty, and I do it for the sport of it. It is, you know, playing polo is a heck of a sport, horse sport, but I can tell you, I never dreamed that driving is as challenging as it is. And I kind of wish more people knew, because if you are a sportsman or sportswoman, it's incredibly challenging to do, and it's physical, and it's hard not to break a sweat when we're out there, because it's tough, especially in the heat. So we're always looking for people who find interest in it, who also want to help preserve it, because, you know, it's called the art of driving, and it has to be preserved and handed down. So I'm fortunate that Misdee brought me into the sport, and and we have a great time doing it together. So.
And Newport is very unique in that you might be having some guest passengers that you've never met, that have never been up on a coach. So what are some of the rules and regulations about having guest passengers on your coach?
Well, we hope that they know how to drink champagne.
I'll have a slide later about that, so yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, Misdee can definitely speak to the appropriate attire. For gentlemen, you know, it's coat and tie and top hat. Top hat probably being the most important aspect of your turnout. For the ladies, I believe, Misdee, it's you can't have your shoulders exposed. You know, we need to wear gloves. We have lap robes covering our laps. It's, you know, it is quite a bit to do, but once you've done it, and if you survive it, you feel quite accomplished.
Most of these traditions are, you know, late 19th century traditions. You know, they're part of what coaching is, and these are sort of just qualities that we try to emulate. And I think that my best version of a passenger, especially with my horses, is the person who knows nothing about horses. They have the best time on a carriage because they're like, what could go wrong? What a great thing. But all of us here know that it's very challenging, and even if you exercise it and everything's perfect on every drive you do, things happen. And especially the reason that coaching as we knew it had its heyday and died was because of automobiles. Automobiles spelled the end of carriage driving. And the reason is because, first of all, these horses had never seen anything like that. And their reaction was so. Horses are very difficult animals to train when it comes to something they're not used to. And I think that all of us here have to train our horses in traffic. So when I'm out with my guys and we come across a tractor trailer or something, I say good, because they need to experience this and they need to hear the sounds. And that's what I said about sort of being on the road. Peter Mayle, who was a very wonderful author of books that are sort of silly but really great things about France, had a great quote about carriage driving. And he said that when you're in a carriage, unlike being in an automobile, you are part of the country. Even at a trot, you can hear dogs barking, you can hear kids playing. When you're in a car, even at a slow speed, the world is slipping by in a little bit of a blur. And I'm a big sports car. My dad loves sports cars, and so I experience life in a similar fashion with that, but it's not the same. When you're in a horse and carriage or a coach, you are part of the world, and I think for better or for worse. So I think it speaks to, you know, enjoyment of the carriage for people who are doing it. I think that is a big part of it, that you get to, especially here in Newport, because one of the things that's interesting about a coach is that you're very high off the ground, and you can see over everybody's hedgerow. And I'm not a person who really cares about anybody else, but people who are on board often peer over here, there. All the whips at this table will say the same thing. When you're driving, and even if you're the greatest whip in the world, you're focused on those horses. So you're not even having a conversation. I always say to my wife, she could be talking to me midway, and I said, what are you talking about? Because I'm focused on the four heads in front of me. But I think that if you've never experienced it before, even in Central Park, it's an incredible experience.
So Walter, stay on that. What makes planning the Newport routes easy and difficult? What makes this event harder?
Newport lends itself to driving because it's such a beautiful place. So that part is easy, but it's also a very busy place. And every year, certainly since COVID, I can't believe the amount of people that come and go out of this city. And so the great thing about what we do here is that if you know the geography, I'm an architectural historian, and so I study things like this, but Newport actually is very interestingly laid out, and it has its colonial core, it has its Victorian area, it has its Ocean Drive, and it enables us to get around, and in a city that's very busy, somewhat freely. I won't say it's easy, but we have excellent police, so, you know, I think the challenge is making it safe and making it fun drives. The easy part is it's so beautiful. So you can't really go wrong, but we need to make sure that our routes are thoughtful and set up places to stop, for instance, if it's hot. All of us have to be mindful of our horses and how they're doing. And if we always try to have areas that are shady, that maybe we have a water truck that follows us. If a horse is getting warm, it needs to be cooled off. these considerations are all part of what we lay out. And we always like to, assume the worst or plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Okay,
No,
folks.
I can't, if I can interrupt, I can't emphasize enough the wonderful work that Walter, you do, and everyone that helps you put out the routes and have them properly manned to keep us safe and keep us separated from pedestrians and automobiles, because that's not always easily done. And I will tell you, probably the most frightening experience I've ever had in my life was here in Newport, and I happened to be driving that day, and a couple in a little red sports car disobeyed all of the police saying, stop, don't go and don't stop here, because I think we're going down Bellevue, and I had to make a right-hand turn, and this little red sports car just blew past the police, and I was coming around the turn, and I had two options. I could either put my team on the hood of that little red sports car or go up on the sidewalk, which, going over the curb, and we were fully loaded with guests, the coach could easily have turned over. And of course, there were pedestrians on the sidewalk, and I thought, well, I'm going to kill my horses if I put them on top of the car, so I'm going to put everyone on the sidewalk. And thank heavens it happened to be in the area where the sidewalk is, goes down for baby carriages and things. And the wheels just rolled up that. And I had two wheels on the sidewalk. Of course, people were getting out of the way. But we avoided the sports car. Thank heavens I didn't run over anyone, thanks heavens. And we kind of popped two wheels down back onto the road off the sidewalk, and everyone went, whoo! And I said, does anyone need a glass of champagne? Because I do. But in all seriousness, that's the only time I think we've ever had a problem. It's just because some driver said, I'm not going to listen to the police. So you guys do an incredible job of keeping all of our horses and our whips and guests
We can also thank the
safe.
Newport police for that, because they put up with this every 3 years. In many places, they'd say, we don't want to do it, but we make them, and they do it well. And one person that should be mentioned is Kenneth Lind. His sister's here, and his brother-in-law are here, and they have done an incredible job organizing. I know Trudy mentioned them, but for many years, Kenneth really has been our man on the ground, and he's not here at the moment, and we miss him, and we hope he gets back soon. But it is just a big responsibility. And like myself, Kenneth kind of grew up being forced to do it, but that means that's institutional knowledge, I would call that. He knows what's has to happen, and Beverly has learned, and now she knows how to do it. And I think that, again, I think it's interesting when you see people watching coaches, their faces light up. But in the same vein, they have no idea what could go wrong. As I said about my passengers, they're just sitting there. But, horses, people always say, horse has a great brain. James and I, all of us here can say there's different qualities of horses. I've had polo ponies that know the game better than I do when I was a kid. And the same is true of driving horses. But people always comment on the brain of a horse. There's a lot of wind in the brain of a horse. They're incredible animals, but they are flighty animals. And things like a sports car, or just things you can't even comprehend, can spook them, and they can go this way and that way. So we always try to be very careful with our training to, assume the worst and hope for the best. But I think that all of the whips here have the same quality, and Misdee encapsulated it perfectly. You have to make a split-second decision. That's a split second. And you have an 18-wheeler size carriage and passengers, and you have to do the best thing. And I think that pilots, polo players, these are pursuits that every little decision impacts what you're doing, and especially with carriages. One of the things I love about carriages, and for me as a polo player, this was very different, was that I can bring my whole family on the carriage. But one of the problems with driving is you can bring your whole family on a carriage. So you have people complaining, you have kids saying, are we there yet? And your wife saying, are we safe? And all these things are going on. And a whip has to be focused and has to make the right decision. And the reason all of us keep doing this is either, one, we're crazy, or we like being in that position of making that decision. And I think that the people I learned from, William Staples, who was mentioned earlier, Charlie Matheson, Jack Seabrook, consummate gentlemen, incredible whips, but they enjoyed the same thing. And for better or for worse, we all have good stories and bad stories, but it's a passion, that's for sure.
We're going to continue with it, Walter, because we're going to get to our lesson plan, folks. This is the one thing I want you to take away from this lecture. We got 3 types of coaches you're going to learn about. Roof seat brake, you're going to see. A park drag and a road coach. So we're going to show you, here's Walter driving his roof seat brake on Ocean Drive. So Walter, why don't you talk about what is a roof seat brake and maybe tell us about this specific one.
So people often ask, is when you say roof seat brake, it's a descriptive word. So roof seat simply means seats on the roof. A coach has it and a brake has it. The brake terminology, people says, does that mean you got good brakes? Yes, hopefully. That's another incredibly important part of our vehicles is good brakes. But what it really means in this terminology, at least in my understanding, is braking a horse to do other driving. So it was a great way to break in your horses for coaching or for other pursuits. So for me, I'm driving my polo ponies, which also is crazy. But it's something, I love my horses, and I ask them to do different things, and I look for different qualities than I'd say are my best horses, maybe. For polo, I look for a little more consistency, stamina, but they are not really capable of pulling something extremely heavy. So a roof seat brake offers you a lighter carriage. This one that I drive was specifically designed for my horses and their size. And it's modeled on a Brewster carriage, which is the foremost carriage of the Rolls-Royce of American carriage making in the turn of the century. And it's a modern vehicle. It actually has ball bearings. It has incredible brakes, but it's perfect for my horses. And I think all of us here make decisions on our carriages for our horses. Coaches are different in that way, but these vehicles are very similar in the fact that they can be driven by 4 horses. They are designed with the roof seat. They could be brought to things like polo games, things like races, and they're built-in grandstands. So they're originally designed to bring the horses to a polo game or a race, unhitch them, and they would push the carriage on the side of the field, and they would have a great time watching the game. You have an excellent vantage point, as I said, of going over the walls, and they're wonderful vehicles. And most all of us here also drive roof seat brakes and coaches, because if you want a little less worry, as Misdee just perfectly said, they're a little less work and weight for the horses. So.
And in fact, here's Melissa driving roof seat brake. You want to tell us about this one? This is beautiful.
Yes, this is a roof seat brake made by Glesson Camping Company. I'm driving it at Shelburne Farms in Shelburne, Vermont. And this is what's called a pickaxe of horses. There are 3 horses in the front, and there are 2 horses in the wheel. And we did this for a demonstration. We took 5 horses and 2 carriages to show the Carriage Association of America how you could create several turnouts. We demonstrated with the 2 carriages and the 5 horses how to go and the harness that went with it to do a single, a tandem, which is 1 horse in front of the other, 3 abreast, pair, a unicorn, which is 2 wheelers and one leader in the center. Then we showed how to take those horses and go into a 4-in-hand, and then we made a 5-in-hand, otherwise known as a pickaxe. And these particular horses I had never driven them in the pickaxe, but I drove them every day in the team, 4-in-hand. And then they asked us to leave. But the interesting thing is we left the Shelburne Farms, and there's a big archway. We just got into the archway, and the center lead horse, his traces, the leather that attaches to the collars and goes back to potentially the carriage or the front of the pole, they fell off. But nobody knew it because we were in the, you've been there, we were in the archway, and my grooms jumped down, put the traces back on the middle horse, and then they said, well, take it for a drive, and it was lovely. But that was the first time these horses had done that, so it was fun.
So we've mastered a roof seat brake team. We're all good? All right, we're going to go on to a park drag, and this is my favorite photo in the book. It's by Sarah Seaman, and this is James and Misdee's park drag. This is last coaching 2022 Saturday lunch. You want to, Misdee, you want to tell us about your coach? I did see it earlier today, so it's here.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. That's really good news.
I was at the Breaker
us.
Stables earlier. It's there.
Yeah, this coach is actually very special to me because one of my mentors, I'm very happy to say, was, you mentioned earlier, Brian, an incredible woman whip by the name of Cynthia Hayden. And I was able to visit her in her later years. And she inspired me to start driving a four-in-hand and a coach. And I was able to purchase the coach that she drove for so many important people, including Chauncey Stillman. And it's just a very historic, wonderful coach. And then I got worried about driving it. Okay. So I visited with her and said, Mrs. Hayden, would you know if there was a similar coach? Because it's that coach was Holland and Holland, a beautiful coach maker out of London. And she said, well, I know of a similar coach, a sister coach that was made about the same time. And she told me where to find it, and I did. And someone went and looked at it for me, and it was practically in pieces. It had not been any work done on it in years. It had been owned by, and it was made for a gentleman by the name of Sir Leonard Powell, who was the president of the British Coaching Club in the 20s and 30s, about that time frame. And he retired from driving, and he gave it to a friend of his, and he drove it in little parades in a little town in England, and then he retired from driving and stuck it in a barn where it deteriorated for the next 80 years. But I said, I'll buy it and sent it to probably the best carriage restorer in the world, who is unfortunately no longer with us. And he took this very beat up bunch of wood, and it was bright red and yellow when it had paint, and there was no upholstery in the interior. I mean, it was really a mess. It had no boxes in the boot, and he and his sons took about a year and a half and restored it to its absolute former glory. And I love driving the coach. And you think of the workman, talk about, if we're a lost breed of whips who drive a coach and four-in-hand, think of the people who can build and restore carriages. And it's becoming a real problem. We can all attest to, are finding people that, who can make a wheel, who can bend the iron around a wheel anymore. We're honestly depending a lot on the Amish. But this coach indeed was a labor of love, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. But it's back, and it's here at Newport, and it even has. If you come by at some of the stops, Mr. Woods said, well, what do you? It's traditional to have some sort of coat of arms or something on the door. And he said, what do you want to put on it? And I said, well, I don't know. Did Sir Leonard Powell have anything? He said, Misdee, you brought it back to life. You are now part of its history. It should reflect something that is important to you. So I am a fourth generation horsewoman. I'm very lucky. And my grandmother was an amazing horsewoman. And so I honored her. Our farm logo is her family's coat of arms, and on that coat of arms is three swans. So I took a rubbing of one of the swans that was on her tea service, and talk about artisans. And I sent it to Nick Woods, just a rubbing, and I said, "Can you recreate that on the coach door?" And he found someone that could do it. So it's very special for me to honor my grandmother and my family.
And James, you mentioned champagne. So if you see the woman in the back of their drag, they're opening up the boot. This is hopefully what you'll find in there. So what are we serving here for lunch or afternoon tea? What's going on?
Are you insinuating I like to party? No, so these private drags, as Walter mentioned, these would be vehicles that you would have used to go to an event, horse racing, polo, whatever you went to. But in the back, they called it the boot, which is kind of a British term. But the boot would hold what effectively look like coolers. And they're made of wood, Misty mentioned this particular coach did not have the set. Did they make those new ones or did they find antique ones? They made them. So, and they're lined with tin, and you load them up with ice and your bottles of champagne, and you also have trays in the back. I don't know if you have photos. Oh, okay, you have it up there. Yeah. So these fit into the back and allow you to have your own tailgate. So the term tailgating came long before we had a Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Okay, we're going to skip a couple slides because we got to get rolling here. So the last ones, we've seen a roof seat break, we've seen a park drag, and now we're going to see a road coach. And I thought I'd have Melissa talk about a road coach because she and Tucker have one today for the weekend.
So the road coach is different from the park drag. The park drag, which Misty just spoke about, was a privately owned vehicle. The road coaches, you'll see the names of towns on the back and on the sides. This was more of a commercial vehicle in its heyday. These vehicles did the mail routes, delivering the mail from town to town. They also did the stage runs so that people could get from town to town. That's how people traveled. When the railroad system came along, the mail service went to the trains, so these carriages became obsolete at that time. But there were gentlemen's and there were syndicates that bought these commercial road coaches, and they continued doing the routes from town to town, Brighton to London. There were a lot of very popular routes in England, so they continued using these. And then private people nowadays purchase them or have purchased them over the years to use them for their own enjoyments, such as events at Newport or competitions. But this was more of this was a commercial way of traveling when we didn't have cars. But they also provided the mail service for everyone. So they were very universal and they were very egalitarian. Most every little town had one, and there were many in Newport. It was a big traveling service for everyone to get around the country.
If you look at the top of the picture, do you see the leather straps? That is where the luggage would be placed, so you could go from town to town. Now, this is the venture. As I said, this was Alfred Vanderbilt's, and he did a public run in 1908 from London. You can see to Brighton. You can see the towns. It was 56 miles every day, 8 changes of horses. That's 8 changes. That's 32 horses he had every day. Harnesses. I mean, could you imagine organizing this without cell phone or email or text? I mean, can you imagine? All the grooms?
We call them fanatics.
I mean, it's crazy.
He was a fanatic. It's a very interesting thing that so many incredibly successful and wealthy people spent their time running a bus service. But obviously, that's a very unglamorous way to describe what Alfred Vanderbilt did, because he was not in any way looking like a bus. He was looking like a sportsman. And I think they really tried to emulate the tradition of this stage driving, including the passengers. So we have some interesting things in the Coaching Club archives, including cards that each coach would have with the name of the coach and would have positions, numbered seats that people would purchase. And at the time, one of the ones we have in the book actually has a very little comment that says, you're limited to 60 pounds of luggage each. And then if you want to pay 50 cents extra, I think the ride was $1 maybe? $1. 50 cents extra, you could ride on the box seat. The box seat, I don't know if we've gone over that, is the front seat. And the box seat is usually occupied by most important person being the whip. But the second most important person, generally speaking, is the other person on the box seat. Usually it's a female. Not always, because sometimes women are driving, in which case it's a male. But they were actually kind of specific on some rules for that position, mostly because the Victorian society was very regimented. The club actually had I don't know if it was formal, but it was definitely part of the Coaching Club's tradition that you could only have a female member of your family or your wife on board of your roofs of your box seat. And that was probably because gentlemen of the time may have taken their girlfriends in that spot, and that was not accepted in Victorian society. Now it's much more egalitarian, but it is the most important position other than the whip, and usually the hat or the costume is accordingly grand. So when you are out there seeing and noticing the coaches going down the road, you will see usually the biggest hats or the most finely cut suits are on the box seat. But Brian Owens is a great example. He's not on the box seat always, but he always looks great. So It's just tradition. You see the photos that we are looking at, and you see this incredible tradition of excellence, as I said about the horses, but also in the costume, right? And so we are also bringing that, a little bit of stage play. Bill Cunningham, who is a very famous photographer for the New York Times, loved coaching and captured it beautifully for many years. And we miss him and his eye. But all of you, I encourage, with our little cell phones, can take great pictures too. So.
Perfect segue. All right, we're going to finish up here. Best places to watch. Who has never seen coaching, by the way? Anybody had never seen it? We've got a couple. Perfect. Here's your cheat sheet, guys, right here. Every morning at Chateau-sur-Mer, we leave about 9. Saturday, we're going to leave at 10:30. But if you want to stop by, see them all leave together. Chateau-sur-Mer is a great start. Friday for pictures, I think, right at Easton's Beach, at the start of Cliff Walk, right at the Chandler, right there on that wall. Get a coffee, plant yourself, take some pictures as they come down Memorial. Beautiful spot. Tomorrow evening at 5, how many do we have? 4 or 5 coaches going. Friday night, we will be in full evening dress, aren't we? Oh, gentlemen, full evening dress on tomorrow night. Beautiful.
Misty will be driving in a gown.
Yes. You'll be on the box seat.
She will be driving tomorrow night.
Good. Excellent.
It's something to see.
I'm sure Misdee would agree, it's very difficult to get on a road coach in a gown, or any kind of coach. My wife can attribute to this.
Very
too.
carefully.
Difficult.
Saturday, how many are we? 11? Are we 11? 11. All 11 coaches will be at the Elm Saturday morning. Great demonstration on the back. It's for about an hour, hour and a half. It's beautiful. If you've never seen it, please come. And then if you have any time on Sunday, we go all the way around Brenton Point. I think that's the prettiest spot. So bring your breakfast, bring a coffee, settle into Brenton Point, and just watch all of us go by. It should be, the weather looks perfect for the next 3 days, by the way. So I think you're in for a good time. We've really enjoyed it. I know these guys are very excited to be here. Newport always turns out a great crowd. Everybody's so excited. Everybody's clapping. Everybody's waving. And it really makes the whips feel good, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's all we have. Do you want to do some questions?
Two quick questions. The Friday evening, 5 p.m., where does that start?
Oh, I'm sorry. At
Chateau-sur-Mer. Could one of the whips briefly describe what you're doing with your hands as you, and perhaps with your voice, as you are controlling the horses?
Thank you, Judy. It's a very good point. Four in hand means you have the reins of all 4 horses in one hand, in your left hand, and you use your right hand for support, and then to take the loops. You're talking all. Okay, thank you. God, I love teamwork. So you have all the reins in your left hand, and you use your right hand to initiate a right-hand turn, a left-hand turn. If you need to bring your leaders back, you pull the 2 leader reins back. You can use your right hand behind your hand if you need to pull all of your reins back if you're going down a hill. So you are always adjusting your reins. And the trick of being, what we like to think that we're accomplished whips is that you don't see how much we're actually doing with our hands. But our hands are going constantly because you run into different things on the road, and the pitches on the road changes. And my niece recently rode on the box seat with me, and she said, "Aunt Misty, it looks like you're knitting." But there's, and, oh yes, and you're carrying the whip at all times. Thank you.
I think one of the things about driving that makes it so difficult, Misdee said perfectly, is it looks easy when someone who's good at it is doing it. But getting 4 horses, as she mentioned, to work together is no easy task. And getting them around all of these hazards that we're seeing every day is very difficult. But I think James would also agree with this, and maybe all of you would, that when you're riding a horse, you have a lot of contact. And so me, from the polo tradition, there's many times I'd like to just jump on one of my leaders and just give them a good swift to say, all right, listen to me. But driving, all you have is your hands. And your hand is telegraphing what you're thinking to those horses and the way you're holding it, the tension you have on them. People say, well, are you using that whip like a ringmaster? No, all the whip is really doing is touching a horse, and maybe you're talking to that particular horse. They all know their names, but that's what you're using it for. It's a touch. It's not a whip per se, but that hand and how they're feeling you and your voice, those are the most important things of four-in-hand driving. And that's why it was such a pursuit and a passion to try to master it, because it's really hard. Really hard.
Well, you know, George Ford Morris might disagree with you on the use of the whip. If you've seen any of his lithographs,
True.
let's go. Everything's racing.
It would get my horse's attention, that's for sure.
But one of the other questions was not just hands, also the audible direction that we give horses. That was the first thing that I had to learn when I went from riding to driving. Is the horses, you have no idea how much horses actually hear you and actually can listen and understand what you're saying. You can calm them with your voice. You can get them going with your voice. And I actually carried that back to polo. I actually talk with my polo horses now when I'm riding them, because they actually do listen to cues, and you can calm them down quite a bit. And just to make a point, these two ladies make it look easy, and it's very much a hard thing to do. The weight of the horses, you can imagine 4 horses' mouths resting on one hand, and for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it's a very tiring sport. And when we mentioned earlier about the art of driving, these two ladies have definitely mastered the art of driving, and they've learned how to keep those big, heavy horses going nice and supple in their hands for a long period of time. And it is hard to do, and you can't manhandle it because they're stronger than you are.
I think we have one in the back here.
I just had a question. On which day will it be Saturday or Sunday that you go all the way around Ocean Drive, like the whole loop?
Sunday.
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 Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This may be self-evident, but can you take us through the term whip, where it came from and why it's carried forward and what it means?
I'm the historian. The whip was named for the person that carries the whip on the carriage, but nowadays most people refer to the whip as the owner of the carriage. When you had a household of servants or people that worked for you, you had a coachman, and your coachman was the person that would be at the wheel of the horse. Remember, earlier in the presentation, I talked about the person that was at the wheel, and they would be the person that communicates with the whip or the owner who's up driving the horses. So it really comes from carrying a whip and controlling the horses. And sometimes the word coachman and whip can be used interchangeably, but typically the whip is the owner of the horses and the coach or carriage.
And interestingly enough, if you follow British politics or ever watch any of the British, they use that word a lot in parliamentary discussions. And it really is someone who's rallying these animals. And that's what I said about getting 4 horses. Every minute we are out there encouraging. And as James said, you can't be heavy because they know it. And I've had many a horse that says, no, that's not how I do it. And getting them all to work together is a real challenge. But I think that a whip that is the best are the ones that really don't have to say much. Their words, the horses listen, and their hands do the rest. And so,
when you drive them long enough, they almost can feel what you want them to do just by your body language. And you haven't even taken a loop to ask them to turn, and you think left and they go left. They start, you almost have to hold them off from making the left before you're ready, because they'll go early on you. You just have to think it if you drive your horses enough. They feel it. They feel it in your hands, because you've already said it. You don't realize you've said it to them in your hands just by thinking it.
but I mean, it's really akin a lot in some ways. I'm not a sailor, and my wife says I'm not allowed to have any more hobbies, so that's okay. But when you're tacking, and sailing, you're setting a course. And when you're driving these heavy vehicles, that's 100% the truth. So you're really navigating with your horsepower, but you're also tracking where you're going. And we just came through the gates down here of Miramar. And James Houston, who's one of our whips that's joining us, did it at a full trot. And he did it once slowly. The second time he went in, perfectly done. But it's like a geometry. You're figuring out how your horses are tracking. As you say, they're listening to you, but you have to be careful you don't go too far. And so it's a real, passion and skill, and not easy to do, that's for sure.
I think we have time for one last question in the back here.
Thank you. I'm very interested in the history of the 11 carriages that you have here. Are they all historic, or are there some new?
Well, come to the exhibition. You're going to hear my voice for at least a half hour talking about each and every carriage.
You'll have a
You didn't
history
hear
of
enough
all
from
the
me
carriages
already.
on Saturday.
You're going to hear me again. But yes, we'll have a whole list of all the carriages that are here, and some history of the horses and history of what the coach was. And
That was a short one, so we have one more to get in.
Thank you. Two words that really sung to me. Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt, and I heard you say archives. And so there's a group here in Newport doing research to restore the fountain on Broadway, which was dedicated to Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt. The information that we're still missing is it's inscribed that 50 of his friends dedicated this memorial, and we're trying to find the list of names of who those 50 were. And the second piece of information is the date when it was dedicated on some type of an event where this fountain was actually put on the curb of Broadway. And we've found no information. And so I hear archives, and I know you all have a wealth of information about the history of coaching. And I'm hoping that you might be able to direct me and our group to finding this information, perhaps.
I can help you with that.
We can look into it.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian, and all of our panelists. One last round of applause for you. We hope to see you all this weekend. You have the drive information, and we'll be at the Elms at 10:30. Have a great night.